So here are some of the images and associations of the Grail mythos. The chalice, cup, or cauldron, like the cauldron of Lugh or Lugh, was the Celtic version of it, in which universal medicines were cooked. Sometimes it's depicted as a platter or a plate. Sometimes it's depicted as a cup. Holy blood or sacred blood, because the word itself, sangral, has two ways of interpreting it, right? One would be sangreal, which is Holy Grail, but depending on where you split the word, it could be sangral, which means holy blood. And that's another component of this mystery, because what we're doing here is it's like we're looking at a complex technology, and where each of these lectures we're going to examine different sections of this, and then we're going to start putting it together to see, once it's put together, what the machine looks like, what the vehicle looks like, you see. So it's also so associated with the ritual of the crucifixion. It's sometimes depicted as a man's head swimming in a salver of blood, or a shallow dish filled with blood, and that would, of course, probably references to like the beheading of St. John. Okay, a quest for something hidden or lost. It's also associated with the fertility of the landscape. Wolfram, as we'll get to, we'll see a stone, or a stone fallen from heaven, a sapphire stone, right? It's associated with the knights, with King Arthur, the Round Table, with the Templars. And in fact, it's almost certain that both Wolfram von Eschenbach and Robert Deberon were both Templars. So two of the preeminent Grail authors were almost certainly Templar knights. It's also associated with the idea of rejuvenation, restoration, universal medicine. It's associated with Joseph of Arimathea, with angels, with the Eye of Thoth, and with a bleeding lance. And we did that quote last week, or last month, but it's probably worth revisiting, just because this is from Cretan. This is the earliest of the Grail stories, and this is after Percival now has finally found his way to the Castle Corbenic, which is where the Grail was being kept, right? And on his way there, he'd kind of gotten lost, was wandering around, and he came upon a lake, and there was a man fishing in a boat. And this, he finds out later, was the Fisher King. And it was really the king who was debilitated, and all he could do was fish. He couldn't really do much else. So anyways, the Fisher King tells him, which he doesn't know it's the Fisher King at the time, tells him how to get to the castle, and without being told, he would have never been able to find it. So he goes and he finds the castle, he's welcomed, he's brought into a great hall, he's seated on a sofa, and then while he's sitting there, they're brought sumptuous food and drink, and then the Grail procession starts. So Percival sat down beside the Lord, who paid him every honor. Within that hall of light from the burning candles was as bright as one could find in any castle. As they were speaking of one thing and another, a squire came forth from a chamber gripping a white lance by the middle of its shaft. He passed between the fire and those seated upon the bed, and everyone in the hall saw the white lance with its white point, from whose tip there oozed a drop of blood. And this red drop flowed down to the squire's hand. The youth who had come there, and that being Percival, the youth, who had come there that night, observed this marvel, but refrained from asking how it came about. For he recalled the admonishment given by the gentleman who had knighted him, who taught and instructed him not to talk too much. So he was afraid that if he asked, they would consider him uncouth, so he did not ask. Then two other squires entered, holding in their hands candelabra of pure gold worked with enamel inlays. The young men carrying the candelabra were extremely handsome. In each of the candelabra there were at least 10 candles burning. A maiden accompanying the two young men was carrying a grail in her two hands. She was beautiful, noble, and richly attired. After she had entered the hall, carrying the grail, the room was so brightly illuminated that the candles lost their brilliance like stars. Important hint. When the sun rises or the moon, After her came another maiden carrying a silver platter. The grail which preceded was of fine, pure gold. So, this is what's known as the Grail procession. So, what is this talking about? Now, first of all, you've got a great hall, right? Now, that's a symbol. What do you suppose it's a symbol of?
The Vesica?
The what?
Vesica?
Not exactly. We'll come back to that then. So then you have this procession. You have the white lance.